So we give people, I think, a minute or two still to trickle in. But as the agenda is relatively full, just only a minute or so. Okay, welcome everyone at this fifth day of the IETF meeting 110. This is this meeting of the Joint Operation and Management Area Working Group. Our chairs today are Tiranjo and myself, Henk. There is a notion here, next slide please, that this meeting is getting recorded. Everybody should be aware of that. And also, if you haven't seen this already, which is maybe unlikely at the fifth day, there is the IETF noteware under which we operate. So if you're curious how IPR works and our anti-harassment and code of conduct rules, there are links here that you can follow in the slide material found on the data tracker. As you apparently all have read and agreed to that, you can go to the next slide, please. Which is, again, making sure how to work through these meetings. If you have never done the virtual one, that's just informational text here. So next slide, please. There is already a scribe duty assigned. Do we have a second scribe already? Sorry, minutes duty assigned. Sorry.
Right, when Elliot Lear agreed to scribe for us, well, he's not talking. I don't know if Elliot has made it. I'm checking. He has. Hi, Elliot. Thank you. When he's talking, I will scribe for the minutes in Cody MD.
Okay, thank you. So that is covered. Again, the other material should be apparent from the data tracker here. So next slide, please, which is the agenda start. No, sorry, it's the backlog of status already. So yeah, the past iteration of 4 months here since the last meeting, we did achieve some milestones and some goals here. So RFC 8969 is now actually published. Thank you for the great work here and the authors to be so vigilant. Going through the auth sections, we have moved 2 publications to the ISG process. The TACAX Young module, of course, and very quickly, and I think that's for publishing and using the process fast finding geofeeds. We passed a working group last call on the NTF ID, so that is now in queue to being moved and finishing that in the process. We adopted a lot of drafts. That is also very good to see. 2 of them, actually like 3 of them, but 2 of them are really much related from Michael. There is one that is also about MUD, but that's the SBOM stuff and finding them. And last one's finally about the YEN module for VPN services, which was a great reception here in the working group of being a vital building block useful for operations in general. Next slide, please. Yeah, as you can see, we have a lot of presenters, which is only the first 3 of them. I'm not going through all of them, but Tiran, if you could just move slowly through the agenda so everyone can have a small overview here. Thank you. Then exactly, you can see a lot of things happening. At the end, of course, we are joined with the open session of Ops area. So the last slot is going to our most dearest ADs here, Warren and Rob, and we will have the open mic. But that is probably mostly that by not the chairs, but the ADs. So now we can actually move to the first presentation, if there are no comments or questions, of course. Hi, Matt. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Hank. So I will start presenting the status of the three drafts on the VPN. So I will start with the common part. Then Oscar will take on the L3NM, and Samir on the last one. Next slide, please. So this is one slide that provides, I would say, the summary on the current status of the VPN common draft. So the basic message is that we are ready, and we received, I would say, important comments and reviews for that one. The one of the I would say the important reviews we received was from the young doctors, and basically there is no, I would say, major issue that was found by the reviewers. There were some proposals to fix some part on mainly editorial on some, or I would say on minor stuff. We fixed that one, and we released the a revision of the document. There was in the last meeting we received, there's a comment from basically from Joe to say that that the model should provide, I would say, more annotation so that it can ease to its readability, because it is not stated in the document itself. So what we have done is that we reorganize various parts of the model itself, and we include a lot of annotation so that can be, I would say, more easy for people to digest. And we think that what we have so far is it's really better, and we have more clarity on the on this part. We also received, I would say, some interesting comment from Gillian and also from Kiriti that to include additional transport protocols, and that was really, I would say, a valid comment. So we addressed that one, and we included the reference into the, I would say, into the model, because we even if our initial scope was not on the test centers, I think that it's really good that to see that various use cases can make use of this model. So that's one we added this extensions and this reference into the model, and then we added more text to describe, I would say, the various data nodes that we have on the draft. So for this one, we think that there is no open issue so far on the document, and the next step that we would like to suggest to the working group, and also for our shares, is to initiate a working group last call for this one. So unless there is any comment on this part, Oscar can take on the next one.
Okay.
Next one, audit.
Yes, can you hear me now? I guess it's okay, right?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you. So now we're gonna give you, I think it's go to the previous slide, please. Exactly, this one. Okay, so as you know, the L3NM model has been here for a while, and we've received a lot of feedback from implementations, and it's been now taken also near to production. So I think we are now very comfortable with the content right now. So here the work that we did for the latest version is, on the one hand, complete the editorial work that needed some rework. So here, for example, just to include all the acronyms, all the architecture terminology section, we align it with the latest drafts, also with the enhanced VPN, with the network slice, with the SCTN. So we are clear on the terminology. Also, as we have been doing some changes in the YANG model itself, all the trees in the model are updated. So what we did as the model is big, okay, so we split it in small parts, okay, and spread them through the document for better readability. Also, we included all the explanations of the different branches and leaves, so the reader can comprehend better the model, not only go to the YANG, but also go to the document to understand what we are meaning, and some explanations for the loopback interfaces. So we received also some comments from Kireti about that part. So it was not understood how it was needed to be done in the model. So we didn't need to change the model itself, but just we added the explanation of how you can manage the loopback interfaces at the VPN and network access level. Also, we made some changes to the appendix to also do the examples not only with IPv4 but also with IPv6 addresses. Okay, so these examples that are provided in the appendix are also updated. So please go to the next one. So when you move to the next one, so not only we are doing some editorial work, okay, but also all the modeling updates come from issues opened in the GitHub. Okay, so it's the official GitHub. So you can go there and check all the discussions. So just to give you a summary of the most important ones that have been incorporated into the latest version, we received requests to add additional attributes for static routes, how to handle the external connectivity, which was also present in the service model. So we incorporate here a profile to add it now as a profile just because we have different solutions today. So we added a profile to cover that. For better readability, we order the leaves in the module. Okay, so now it was a suggestion made that it was as we came from the very early versions, adding new leaves, we need to do this reorganization. Also for the multicast use case, so this model is being used also today, and it's put in also into production to model a multicast network for TV. So from here they come a lot of inputs, and we have now the support for PIM, IGMP at both the VPN node and the VPN access level, the TCP level. So the support is full. Then the CP security part and some fields that came from the service model have them in the network model. And some generalization of the concept of maximum routes allowed. So if you want to go to the next one, please. So then we are happy with the issue so far. So there is a small comment added in the GitHub yesterday or a couple of days ago with that we think it's useful, and we already have a proposal to cover that. It's an enhancement, so it's not changes anything fundamental in the model, it's just an enhancement. So we do think the document is ready for working group last call, and as a complementary work to this piece of work, follow the service mapping in TIAS that uses this model as a base and then adds on it and plugs all the traffic engineering tunnels. So go TIAS for that discussions. So with this, I finish the L3NM part.
So please go to the next slide. Hello, I was just briefly describe the status of the L2NM. So the L2NM, as Matt highlighted in the first slide, is in the same Git repository from the other two drafts. The document has followed the same structure as the L3NM, as Oscar has mentioned, to increase the readability and how to the people is able to understand the model. We have desglosed it in several parts, including the connection, the routing protocols, and everything is explained in the document. The model has lag from the other two, but in this moment the main contribution of the model is the inclusion of the EVPN support and the usage of all the common definitions that we have described in the first draft. During the last months, we have received the routing directorate review. The issues that they raised there were solved, and we have a list of open issues in the Git repository that we are working on. So some of the issues that are listed here in this slide. The first one is related to the support of the DeepServe MPLS of the RFC 327. The issue 204 is related to the clarification of the EVPN flavors. The next one, the 202, is related with the Split Horizon support at the VPN network access level. And the finally the IP fast reroute support. So next slide, please. So in addition to the revision of the issues of the routing directory, we have included, we have closed additional issues more related with, as I commented before, with the VPN support. So we have included some Ethernet segment identifier parameters, control words, and kind of configuration for the targeted LDP and .1Q support. We have also include the precedence type in order to define the availability of the paths. We have included in the document additional examples and how to use as the L2NM. And we have included a node list just in order to not limit the number of elements in the service. So next slide, please. So finally, as I mentioned initially, our main focus is the inclusion of the EVPN support. So in this moment, we request the review of this part by the IETF experts. This will be really helpful. The closer issues will be included in the next draft release. So we will include all the updates to the document. And we are working in the next steps as solve the open issues that we have open in this moment in the GitHub. So finally, we expect all the reviews and comments from the working group to enhance the model and complement it as we have in the common and the L3NM. So I don't know if you have any questions.
Any questions from the working group? I see Rob, you're in the queue.
So my question was just on a process point of view. And I know you pulled the common stuff out into a separate module, and you're saying that that's ready for working with last call, and the L3NM model is. My question is it okay to progress those two with this one still being open and being actively developed? Is there going to be any issues in terms of wanting to subsequently churn stuff that is lower down in those specs?
You hit one of my questions. I see, Med, you were coming up, but Med or any of the authors, you want to tackle Rob's question?
Yeah, this is actually a good question that we already discussed last time, and the agreement we had is that we will try to I would say to stabilize the three documents by this IETF meeting, and if we file to have, I would say, an acceptable set of the L2NM, we will progress only the common and the L3NM. So what we, at least I'm on the authorship team, what we decided is that for the common so far, it will be frozen. So there is no, if there is any specific, I would say, item that can be induced or detected when we will go into specific detail for the L2NM, that will be covered directly into the L2NM document itself. So that's why we are confident that we progressing only the two ones won't, I would say, there is no dependency again on the L2 one.
Okay, so just one other choice here would be to progress these through working with last call, and then for me to hold the common one and the L3NM one until this one had progressed to working with last call as well, if that was a helpful choice path.
Personally, I don't see, I would say, again, this will be a decision from, I would say, from the working group. But for me, I don't see a need to wait for the L2NM to progress the two other ones, because if the initial, I would say, rationale that we had for the common is to, I would say, to identify the common data nodes that can be reusable from the various models at the L2 and the L3, but also at the network and the service level. And I think that we have then, I would say, the exercise. We can continue to stretch that exercise, but it will never be, I would say, as perfect. So yeah, we can wait, but I don't personally see a value for that. So we have the common, we have one the L3NM, which I would say exemplify how we can use the common model. If there is anything that can be, I would say, required at the L2 level, that can be just handled in that one else. So perhaps I'm repeating myself, but I don't see a need to wait for it.
Thank you. Thanks for answering my question. That clarifies.
Elliot, I see you in the queue as well.
Thanks for this presentation. I just have a process question myself, but I haven't noticed a lot of chat on these drafts on the group. Maybe I'm just not seeing them, or they're getting misfiltered on my email, but are the issues being resolved on list, or are they being resolved by the authors independently?
So before Med, you jump in, that was going to be another one of my things that I brought up that I'd asked previously to bring some of the. I see like some of the GitHub work here, and yes, it's the official GitHub, but we need to bring some of these items back to the list as you discuss them in your author group, as you agree on resolutions. Some I saw around 109 came back, but to Elliot's point, I haven't seen a lot.
Yes, so I think that this is also another point that we have discussed also in previous meeting, that we and yes, you are right. We have regular meetings that are organized every week among the I would say people who are interested on this work, and this meeting are advertised and I would say sponsored by the working group, and this I would say the information to connect are available. I think from the working group level. Some of the issues, yes, we discuss them sometimes on the GitHub. It's for example, yesterday I have sent a note to the list about one of the, I would say, of the comment that we received from an implementer, and for which we would like to, I would say, to hear more comments on it. So it's always for us, it's doubling the effort. I agree with you. But what can be done, at least by, I'd say, by our chair, is that at least you can configure the GitHub to send, I would say, a summary of the issues on a weekly basis, and then people, I would say, can jump in if there is any points to be further discussed.
So if I may respond.
Go, please, Elliot.
Well, there's an easy way to handle this, right? Which is, if you're having weekly meetings on this stuff, just post the results of those weekly meetings so that people know what's going on. I mean, it's simple enough.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Med.
Yeah, we can do that for the, I would say, for the remaining part of the work. So that's a valid and a fair comment. So that yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, that's what we've been doing in NetMod with some of the Yang versioning work. Every week we just post the minutes back to the list. I think that would give a little bit more immediate visibility.
And would it be? Is it okay? Just let's say referring for the technical details, referring to the issue in GitHub. So instead of having to, let's say, to repeat all the discussions, is it enough just to put the pointer there to Git?
I would say yes, with the summary of like the title of the issue, and the link. I've seen that work, but like where there are decision points or specific discussion points, I think a brief summary as part of the minutes would be useful. And I see Rob in the queue as well.
I think it's sometimes helpful to split the issues between ones of editorial nature, which I think you can just handle, and ones that are sort of like a design change or something that requires consensus or agreement for the working group. And there, I don't think you need to spread all the discussion back to the working group necessarily, but I do think it's really helpful to actually give the conclusion of how the issue was resolved, and if possible, if the text is one block of text, I think it's helpful to actually then copy that to the working group and say, look, this is the resolution. Has anyone who's not been following the actual design meetings able to comment on that? I think it's helpful to get as much coverage of those as you go along where possible.
Warren?
Thanks. Yeah, largely what Rob and you said. If there's a decision made that needs to be posted to the list and a short summary of sort of what the question was and what the decision was / how it was arranged, that obviously we don't need the whole discussion, but like somebody raised this as a concern, we discussed it, we decided X, here's the issue, if you want more background, I think is reasonable.
And Med, did you want to comment to that? Nope. The last thing I had that wasn't covered, so I jotted down the working group last calls. We talked about that. On the expert review again for L2 and M, by the way, I did find those GitHub issues. They're actually under L3 and M in the repository, so that was a little bit of the 200 level issues. But for that expert EVPN review, we found someone in the routing directorate who did that. Can you follow up with them, or would you like something more formal in Data Tracker?
I don't think that we need something which is formal, which we can follow with the expert if you provide one. We already tried from our side to get in touch with other people who are familiar with the technology. Yeah, so no need to be formal here.
Okay, I thought we found the routing directorate pointed us to someone. I'll double check and we'll get that taken care of after 110. Thanks. Okay, you mentioned something, but we're running short on time, so I'm going to follow up on list about that comment, Oscar, but thank you. I think we need to move to the next presentation.
So next.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, okay. My name is Bo, and I'm going to provide the updates of this VPN service performance monitor draft, and I'll present on behalf of all the other authors. And next slide, please. Oh, okay. Here's a recap for this VPN service performance monitor model. And since last meeting, this draft has been adopted as working group draft. And here on the figure, you can see the figure on the left. This model is used between service orchestration and network controller. And it's the similar interface between like the layer 3 NM and layer 2 NM just mentioned, just presented. And on the right, here's a modeling approach of this model. And the underlying network has been modeled by 8345, and this modeling approach of this model is augmented the VPN and network performance statistics nodes based on the basic network and topology model. And in that way, the network and association between VPN and performance monitor has been collected together. And next slide, please. here is the open issues from the adoption core. And the major, I just leave the major ones, and there are other some editorial ones we are going to resolve. And the first major one is to add a reference to 8309, because right now this draft only refer to the 8969. It's about the modeling automation framework. 8309 has defined the service model and divide the service model into the customer service model and also service delivery model, that which is from the provider network view. So and this model belongs to the network service model. So we think the author think this is a reasonable one, and we will add this reference. And the next major one is the layer 3. A layer 2 VPN is also in the scope. Currently, the model mainly give the add the nodes about the layer 3 VPN. So the comments raised about the layer 2 VPN should also add some MAC table entry statistics, and also other statistics like different OEM protocol source should also be added to add the association to layer 2 VPN. And the third one is need to add more examples to illustrate the usage of YAM model, and particularly one is percentile. That is right now we have the text, but example is more helpful. The next slide, please. And I think the next step mainly is to address the pending issues I just mentioned, and also we can to work together with layer 2 NM and layer 2 NM team to check out whether there are some additional data nodes to be supported on this model, so that these data are more complete. So and that's all for my presentation, and we like to collect more reviews and comments from the working groups. So any questions about this?
I think one from the previous presentation that, as I understand, you've also been involved in the authorship meetings for the common L3 and L2 NMs. Just having some more of the discussion that's happening there as part of those minutes could be helpful to stir more comments here.
This draft hasn't been discussed regularly on the design team of layer 3 and layer 2 NM. So, okay. But we will provide the updates decisions to the working group list. Yep. We will see that.
Thanks.
Okay.
So any more questions? So we are going to the next presentation. Thomas.
Yes, can you hear and see me?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So next slide, please. So this draft has been already presented at Opsawg on IETF 108. So I just go very briefly through the draft and give you at the end an update what has been changed recently. So the main objective of the draft is to update the MPLS top label type registry So it covers not only the classical MPLS data plane usage, but also the MPLS segment routing part. Next slide, please. So in a nutshell, what's missing is all the network protocols which has been developed at IETF for MPLS segment routing. These are missing in this registry. Next slide, please. In order to update the existing registry, some changes needs to be done on the registry. There is a mix-up between requester and referencee. In the meanwhile, I've been in contact with IANA, and the IE doctors confirmed that the registry needs to be corrected in order that we can add the additional code points there, and I got the confirmation that this will be done within the next few weeks. Next slide, please. So I collected various feedbacks from Spring, MPLS, LSR, Opsawg mailing lists. I also presented at MPLS at IETF 109. Originally in the -05 version, or previous to -05 versions, there was also an additional context concerning the segment routing seed type. I got various feedbacks from the mailing lists that this is not desirable in IPFix, and I removed that in favor of it's already been covered in the SR Young model. So therefore, it's not needed to cover that as well on IPFix. And as I said previously, the registry, the IE46 registry, should be corrected anytime soon. And once it's done, basically the additional code points could be added there. I received positive feedback as well from MPLS, and I would like to call again adoption on Opsawg. Any feedback or comments? Okay, then that's all from my side.
We have Rob in the queue.
Okay, Rob.
Sorry, just turn your mic off from Thomas.
I can hear you. Yeah.
I'm getting reverb back. Oh, that's okay. So just to check, and Benoit's here, so he probably has a definitive answer. Am I right in thinking this is adding these attributes? Anyone can do this anyway. I think that registry allows anyone to add them. So I guess what I'm thinking is we shouldn't make too high a bar. If these are useful fields to add to the IPFix registry, then I think that's a useful thing to do. Benoit's going to comment.
Benoit?
Right. So I guess you can hear me. So yes, anybody could go on the IANA and register IPFix information element. However, the added value is whenever we've got like multiple IPFix information elements together, it's worth to still publish a document, I believe, to explain some background. And I agree with you that the bar shouldn't be too high for adoption, but for requesting IANA.
Yeah, exactly. I actually went, before I was creating this stuff, I went directly to IANA and requesting to add this because the code points are referring to existing RSCs. But IANA requested from me that there is an official document, an RFC or a draft should be present there, and therefore I created this draft.
So if the question is for me, Rob, I mean, I believe we should just quickly adopt it and publish it. And I can commit to review it one more time if you want.
Thanks, Benoit. Yes, I think actually I was coming to the same conclusion that I agree that adopting this is the right thing to do. I think so. I'm supportive of that.
Thanks for agreeing to review. We'll put this call after the after 110. And I haven't forgotten, Benoit, that you'll review. I'll mention that as well. So thank you.
Thanks a lot. Excellent.
So next one. Elliot?
Oh, okay. So let me just pause for 10 seconds while somebody takes over the minutes taking from me. And as I'm doing, I'd like to just introduce this draft on behalf of myself and Scott Rose. This is a just recently adopted draft on software bills of materials. Next slide, please. Okay, so between what's happened since the previous IETF, obviously, as I mentioned, it's now posted as a working group draft. Scott and I are already working on some editorial changes, just editorial changes for 0.1, and I'll come to some of the bigger issues based on bigger feedback. And without further ado, let's get to the bigger issues. Next slide, please. Okay, so we still have one whopper of an issue that's open. Now, as a reminder, when I called for adoption on this, I said that we should adopt, but we should slow roll this document. And that is to say, we're in no hurry to rush this into working group last call. We want to get a fair amount of operational experience before we run it through that process. So you might expect some implementation drafts, a la what goes on in Quick or in the HTTP working groups before we're really going to push hard to get this thing adopted. So if you're looking for a fast RFC, this is not the draft. We don't know, for instance, yet, based on some of the format work that's continuing, whether it will be necessary to discover one or multiple SBOMs out of a system. And so we're still trying to work that out. This amounts to, do we have an array or do we have a single object? And, it's not a big deal, but it is, if the SBOMs are going to live in different places, for instance, then we have to rework the draft a little bit. We have to figure out exactly how to return that information in some reasonable way. The second major point that Scott and I discussed, and there's one of three, there are a couple of others, is that an SBOM on its own, what an SBOM delivers to you, and what discovery of an SBOM delivers to you, is an inventory of the device. With that inventory, especially if you're using common names of software, you can reference into the NVD, for instance, the National Vulnerability Database, or the MITRE database, or pick your favorite national database from whatever country you're from, and see that, oh, a vulnerability has been posted to this particular piece of software. What that doesn't tell you is whether or not the software has already been repaired. And so, for instance, it could be that the vendor spent a lot of time working on all these vulnerabilities, and you just see the same version of a particular piece of software, and yet you get a false positive when you go to test. So other work is looking at a concept. It's really a concept, not so much a specification, of something called VEX, which is Vulnerability Exploitability Exchange. And in fact, the acronym is something that everybody bemoans, that we have this acronym. Now, the person who's speaking created something called MUD, so I am no person to judge such things. However, the concept basically is, can you say that for a given vulnerability on a product, actually that vulnerability has been repaired or is otherwise inapplicable for this device? And so there are a couple of ways to express that, one of which would be the common vulnerability reporting format that's done by that's done in OASIS by CSAF. Another is, and this really just does answer, the question in great detail, actually. Is this thing vulnerable to a particular CVE? What, is it patched, and how is it patched, and what versions do you need to go fix it? And so and there's a separate format, and this is the wonderful thing about standards, is that there are so many of them, called Cyclone DX, that roughly covers the same ground. So one of the questions for the working group, and we will definitely be taking this to the list, is should we be adding this capability to this draft? And so the whole benefit of this is that if you put out a software bill of materials for your product, and you don't put this thing out, people are going to start calling saying, are you really vulnerable because you happen to have this version of OpenSSL in your code, and I just saw this announcement. And so to keep the phones from being off the hook, you'd like to be able to provide this either on your website or programmatically, and this would be the programmatic answer. Next slide, please. So the other thing, this is more a simpler matter, which is we're thinking that we want to remove the SWID references. The people that are working in the various proofs of concept on this technology have said, you know, SWID isn't really useful in this context, but Cyclone DX is, so we might just want to switch that. But our goal in the draft, just to be clear, is we want to be a little bit technology neutral about all this. There's going to be a lot of formats. We really want to rely on the HTTP content type headers, accept headers, and things like that, and so that the information can come across in whatever way it can come across. But that requires a little bit of thought. And Scott, who I don't believe is here on the call, would say the other thing that we have to do is examine the work of Rolly, which I'm not familiar with, to see. Oh, Scott is on the call. Maybe, Scott, you want to comment a little bit about Rolly before, and I know we're running out of time, so if you want to briefly comment, maybe you could be a little bit more clear than I am. But this is another issue that we have to talk about. And that's really all I have.
There was a comment from Jeff Haas. I'll relay for him in chat. Should the SBOM actually be a recursive set of manifests? A component may contain other components that have manifests. Groups of components are used to build a system, etc.
Yes, Jeff. So it's a great question, and our problem in answering that question is that is a matter of how the SBOM format is organized, and we're trying to be format neutral. And so that gets us into, well, suppose you're referencing, if you've got one SBOM and you're referencing another SBOM, right, how does that referencing work? And I think we have to add an example of that sort of thing going on, but I need a live example. And right now, the people who are doing the format work aren't yet up to that task. And so that's why, another reason why we have to slow roll this. This is really live technology work across several different industries, actually.
So hi, this is Henk. As an individual, no hats on. With the question to one or more SBOM to be discovered, that is, I think, strongly related to the dependencies of SBOMs with each other. If they are somehow related, there might be dependencies on them, and you have to retrieve all of them. Some of these subsets of this might be from one authority, so discovered at one location, there might be more than one, yes, that are already somehow depending on each other, which could be done via native nesting of a document that would solve it. With I don't know, binary stuff, you could do a CBOR sequence, that's relatively easy. With other stuff, yeah, the 3T SPDX side of the modeling here that's happening under the ITNA umbrella, they have this artifact concept that also has some defects in it, and again can relate to other SBOMs. So yes, these things can point to each other, I think, in a very elaborate semantic way, actually, and that I assume should be somehow at least covered with as expositional text in the discovery methods here. Also, with respect to examples, you said you want to be relatively technology agnostic. I would +1 that strongly. So if you go with an example like Cyclone DX, I would at least make it 3, the golden number, to show this little bit diversity here. I'm fine with removing SWID as the top-level SBOM reference because by itself, it's like a CVE, not so super useful. It will be used by other things. So that is therefore, I think, totally fine.
Okay, thanks, Hank. That's a lot of stuff, and we'll take that onto those because I know this group is really pressed for time. Okay, so thank you very much, and look for more comments on the list.
Thanks.
So this one, the open matrix.
Yes. Can you hear and see me?
Yes.
No, you should be able to. Okay. Next slide, please. So talking about open metrics, I need to talk about Prometheus for a second. Of course, Prometheus is where all of this is coming from. Prometheus is inspired by the original monitoring system within Google. It's a time series database. The effort or the protocol underlying this effort is stable since 2014. We have various other implementations of the same standard and of the same whole ecosystem. You probably have this that is explicitly designed to be monitored by Prometheus. It's default in the cloud native ecosystem, ranks highly in various forms and factions. We have over 700 exporters and integrations which have been created by others, not by us. Next slide, please. So the summary of what I want to say here, that there is a really wide base of adoption of what we are talking about. The millions of installation is something we have hard data for. Next slide, please. So now coming to open metrics and what it is. We had one political problem that a lot of vendors and projects didn't want to support something which carried the Prometheus name because it is for them a competitor, be it project or vendor, doesn't matter, but it's still a competing thing. So we wanted to have a neutral name for the whole effort. Doing networking for 15 years myself, I consider IETF and RFC still the gold standard of how to communicate standards on the internet. So that is also one of the founding goals of open metrics, and basically do a really careful evolution of what we have. We had input from dozens of people. We have used open metrics in production in Prometheus for 3 years now. We had outside vendors or other vendors re-implement from our reference code. So there is interest in the ecosystem. Sorry, next slide. The whole Prometheus ecosystem is predetermined to be moving to open metrics. And within the CNCF, again, branching out into cloud native, this is not so much IETF, obviously. We ranked 5th place in adoption and end user intent. Next slide, please. This is how the whole thing looks. And yes, I appreciate that this doesn't give you the full depth of the thing, but basically you have key value pairs which you attach to your metric data, as in your numeric data and your exposed data. We also have protobuf for efficiency reasons. Next slide, please. And that is the super quick preamp. There's more slides behind if we need them for questions, and else I would heartily invite questions and discussion. Okay, if we don't get questions, we can also
do you want to go over this? Do you want to go over this?
Absolutely. I deliberately structured in a way so I can carry on, or I don't have to. Both is completely fine. So
we do have a one in the queue if you want to take a question right now.
Hi.
Hiroyuki.
Can you hear me?
We can.
I'm Hiroyuki from GRI in Japan. We use Grafana to monitor our servers. I hope more software supports open metrics. I support you. Thank you.
Thank you, Hiroyuki.
This is Tianran, and I have one question. Actually, I'm missing here. What do you want to actually standardize here? The data model or the transport protocol?
Both. It is a wireframe, the transport protocol based on HTTP. but it inherently carries a data model within itself to, so it is a data model and also at the same time a wire format / transport.
Okay, so you mean the whole framework?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
I mean, you wanna, yeah, I understand you wanna standardize the transport protocol and the data model and the encoding and all of this, right?
Yes, this is one thing which is basically ready to be used to transmit the data. If you might be implying that this is better split up into different parts within the context of IETF, if I'm right with this assumption, absolutely, no issue from our end. Getting feedback on how to do this properly is my main intention here.
More questions?
Benoit, I see you in the queue.
Right, thank you. So thank you very much for coming to the IETF from an open source, widely developed and deployed project. So thanks for that. So you're very welcome. Now, there is just one thing is that, you know, in one of your slides, you speak about interface as a simple example, right? We've been having many definitions of interfaces, you know, whether this is like in MIPS, in Yang, etc. So we might be facing the issue that we've got yet another data model that we have to map somehow, somewhere. But since this is like anyway deployed, so thanks for coming to the IETF and to analyze this.
I agree that it's super icky to introduce new standards, and it's not very likely that old standards will be fully going away if you introduce new ones. And we had this debate for quite some time before even starting this. But given the adoption even back then, we decided that there is a need in the industry to standardize on this, and we see quite some confusion around people not doing it precisely correct or not at all. So yeah. We basically had our hands forced by the adoption of that thing, that we need to standardize it.
That's a good problem to have.
Elliot, I see you.
Hi, thanks for bringing us to the IETF. We have a bit of experience in how we take on these sorts of this sort of work that has been developed elsewhere. And what works and what doesn't work. What doesn't work is if a part of the ecosystem wants to come to the IETF with a work and another part doesn't, and then what you end up having is an open source war. And so you know, if one of the questions is if you're showing up here, well, other people show up here to participate so they could get their work done and use the mechanisms that the IETF has in order to produce the standard. And that's a question. And then a comment here is one thing that we normally do in these processes is the first thing we do is we just document existing practice. So as not to perturb what's going on. And that you usually produce an informational document first and then a standard second. And so the idea is so that if we want to do the evolution, people know what they're evolving from the IETF's process standpoint. So we can, I mean, usually that can be pretty lightweight as long as you can write out the description. And I would absolutely support getting the informational document out quickly, right? That's, you know what the wire format is today, you know what your information model is today. And then if people want to go from that, right? Then the other thing that this group is usually pretty good about is understanding that, oh yeah, there actually is an installed base, so they don't do crazy things. Even though, as Benoit says, you know, we do have all these other information models, but if what you have is working for you, I don't think there's a lot of religion in the IETF on that point, because we've just been talking about, for instance, Wireshark as a separate example, and how to standardize PCAP and PCAP-NG. So it's not a religious point, but that would normally be the path. Thanks.
So to address the comment first, that's basically our intention. Document what is already adopted. That is the 1.0, and that is the basis which everyone can then agree on and use, and going from there with an evolution. The point. No, let me mentally restart. So for this one, if this is informational or if this is BCP or I don't know, I need guidance here. Simple as that. I will follow whatever the group consensus is. Of course, you know this better than I do. Simple. But yes, again, it is about documenting what is already there. So we have tied this down, and then we can improve on this one. And we already have a few ideas about where to improve, and we have design documents on this. And obviously, it makes sense to open this once the WP goes into it. As to your question initially, there are some other, or there's mainly one other major initiative in the same region, that is OpenTelemetry, and the two groups are working each other, where OpenTelemetry is trying to achieve 100% compatibility with OpenMetrics for the simple reason of adoption. It's probably going too far to give the complete dump of the history and everything right now, but we can do this on a mailing list or in whichever form. Or I can go there now, I don't care.
Yeah, just to re-emphasize the point, it's just important that if you want to do the work here, that the people who are interested actually show up and do the work here. That's really my main point.
Well, that's the point, yes.
Warren.
So thanks. This is Warren. Yeah, I mean, I think that it would be really good if we could get this documented. Clearly, it's very widely deployed, and having the official way to do it written down would be really good. But I think this needs to start off as an informational document. And like Elliot and I think Benoit, I have some concerns that we're getting full representation from everybody who's actually participating. We should make it clear when the document gets adopted that we are simply documenting an existing standard or sort of an existing deployed system, and that the working group can't really change much about it because what we're doing is documenting a deployed thing. But the working group does have change control when it becomes an IETF document. So we'll have to be careful that we don't try and change the substance of it, but there is going to be, I think, a fair bit of back and forth making sure that the document is actually clear and understandable. And what I'd like to confirm is that the group who's working on it will actually be able to participate fully, and we'll be able to devote the necessary time to it. I know that this, just so folk know, Rich and I have been having discussions over quite a while now at FOSDEM and other. So I want to make sure that the working group or the people working on it don't have enough energy to commit to actually taking comments, integrating them, etc. That's all.
That's a fair point, and yes, that is it's currently 4 people doing the main work. That is a commitment from our side. This is the intention to do it as such. We took a bit of a breather after this marathon, but new year and we are back.
I'd hate to do this, but we're going to have to cut the mic in order for us to get through the remaining 3 sessions and leave any time for ops area. So I would ask Chin and Elliot if you could take your additional comments to the list, and we're going to need to move on. But the good news is there's a lot of discussion, a lot of interest. So thank you, Richard, for coming to present, and let's keep this going on the mailing list.
And thank you.
Okay, let's go to next. QLog.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you all for giving me a little bit of time to talk about QLog. Next slide, please. Which stands for Quick Logging, which is a project we started a couple of years ago when we started to notice that these new protocols were getting quite a bit more complex than the previous ones, and that we would need additional tooling to help analyze their behavior. Um, now, what you would typically do for something like TCP, next slide, is you would of course take something like a packet capture somewhere in the network, and then analyze that using a tool like, for example, Wireshark. You can still do that for QUIC and other encrypted protocols, but it's more difficult because, next slide. QUIC now already encrypts a lot of its transport metadata as well. So if you want to do this, you would have to store the entire packet capture, including the very large payloads, and then also, of course, the TLS decryption secrets to get the final information out of there, which could lead to problems at scale. And there's a second long-standing problem with this approach. Next slide. It's that not all protocol aspects are actually reflected on the wire. Things like congestion control, for example, are not always sent to the other side, but very necessary to debug, especially in initial implementation. So next slide. What we eventually ended up doing for QUIC was take a different approach, and instead of logging in the network or taking packet captures, we instead exfiltrate this information from the implementations directly at all of the endpoints, or let's say vantage points, because we can of course also log at intermediate devices as well. This approach then allows us to only log the things that we actually need, so being better for privacy and also keeping the overhead lower. This is of course not a fantastic new idea. Most implementations have some kind of debug logging output. But the idea of QLog was to have like a single way, a single format, single schema that all the different implementations can reuse. So that makes it easier to build reusable tooling on top. Next slide. That means that QLog is far from rocket science. Basically, what we have now is a mapping onto JSON, and we just have a schema that defines how you should log several individual event types. For example, what should a received packet look like, or if you indeed want to log some congestion control stuff, how you should do that. Next slide. Using this type of thing as input, we then built a couple of reusable tools, which were gathered in the QViz tool suite, where you get, for example, this type of packet sequence diagram. Or next slide. We also have tools that are similar to TCP trace, but then of course applied to QUIC, and several other specialized tools can be found on the website as well. Next slide. This approach turned out to work quite well for QUIC, having both the common format and some public tools at least, leading to most of the QUIC stacks currently actually outputting the format directly. There's also some experience with large-scale usage by Facebook, who are using this to monitor and analyze their QUIC deployments at scale. So given this relative success for QUIC, we are now moving to adoption of this work inside of the QUIC working group. Next slide, which is intended to be part of the recharter of the working group. And there are two goals. The main one is, of course, finalizing this for QUIC and HTTP3. But the secondary goal, which is one of the reasons why I'm talking to you right now, is because we believe that QLog can be used for more than just QUIC and HTTP3, of course. General idea of having structured event logging and a basic approach to that can be applied to almost all encrypted and even non-encrypted protocols as well. And there are already several efforts underway to define schemas for the protocols that you see here on the slide. This is also already visible in the current QLog drafts. Next slide, where the drafts are split into two. We have one that defines the QUIC and HTTP3 events, but then we also have one that kind of describes the main schema. What we're calling it is all the protocol agnostic stuff. And our goal is to have this evolve into, let's say, a sort of best practices or guidelines down the road that can then be used by other protocols, other working groups to define their own schemas for individual protocols and use cases. Next slide. Of course, in doing something like this, there are a lot of different challenges that arise. One of the reasons I really wanted to come here today is that I think you have already faced a lot of these challenges with some of the work that has been done in the IETF and the ops area, especially around things like Yang, for example. But the thing is that and if we're honest, not many people in the quick working group are all that into this type of work or all that experienced with these type of formats. So we're hoping to get a bit of feedback from you on these things. I'm going to highlight just 3 of the main ones that I think might be most relevant to you all here. Next slide. The first one is that we're currently using JSON as a serialization format, which is very nice and it's very flexible. It's also not the most performant approach that you can have. So there are some discussions about maybe moving this to something else. What we've currently done in the draft to kind of bypass this final decision is to describe the events in kind of a serialization format independent way. For this, we've been using very ad hoc data type definition language that you can kind of see an example of on the right side. But we would, of course, rather move to something more default and standard. Some people have already suggested, for example, CDDL and Yang, since our goal is, of course, to be able to automatically generate schemas and serializers, deserializers for these things. But again, we don't necessarily have the experience with these formats and approaches to know how to start or how to do this correctly in practice. Next slide, please. Second aspect is, of course, privacy. It's very simple to say that in theory we can scrub logs for sensitive information because we're logging at the endpoints. But of course, for some use cases, you still need, for example, the raw IPs or the URLs that users connected to, and so on and so forth. So what we're thinking about now is having some kind of a sanitization level approach where you have different use cases or more or less strict in how to sanitize, and we give some guidelines on how to do this, which hashing to apply or which fields should be left out completely. Again, this is something that I think you here have probably encountered at some point or the other when collecting information. Would be interesting to hear of similar approaches. Finally, next slide. As you might have heard, there are some questions about Quick's manageability, given that a lot of things like, for example, latency or packet loss are no longer simply deducible from the wire image like they are with TCP. And there are also some problems with the current approaches around the spin bit and loss bits. Some might not even want to deploy them. So one option we might think of is using QLogs to kind of help subvert this, where you can imagine an idea where parties share QLogs or very sanitized or very redacted QLogs amongst themselves to help monitor end-to-end encrypted connections. Whether or not that's a very good idea or workable in practice or anything like that is at this point quite unclear. But it's definitely something that we will be talking about. And it's also something where, in a sense, for as much as I understand about these things, we have some parallels with things like IPFix and similar projects that are being worked on here. So also there, I hope we can leverage your experience and opinions on these matters to let us know if this can be done, how it should be done, and if it's a good idea or not. Finally, last slide. If this turns out to all work quite nicely and can be generalized, the idea is to go for maybe a separate working group down the line that helps finalize all of this. But for now, for practical reasons, we're going to keep this inside of the quick working group, which the work will start in a couple of months. So I'm hoping some of you might be willing to join us there to give us some insight. Of course, we're also on GitHub on the mailing list, and I would be very happy to answer any of your questions and listen to some early feedback right now. So thank you.
Well, we don't have a lot of time. I see that, Jeffrey, you're in the queue.
Thank you. I'll try to keep this quick. I'm going to apologize for not being familiar with your material. It's the first time I'm seeing related stuff. The two comments I'd give you is that I do suggest you consider looking at Yang, not specifically because you think that's the best match for things, but one of the features that the language is enjoying right now is that it's a modeling language. The actual serialization formats that Yang is allowed to output are multiple. So you can get JSON format, CBOR. You can even get other more denser formats as well. So this gives you one level of abstraction to be able to do the modeling and do the exchange elsewhere. My second comment is I think the majority of your work is going to be figuring out how to define a common header that can be used for the exchange model for passing these objects around. Once you have that, the protocols for doing subscriptions for things of interest is going to, I think, fall out from there.
Okay.
Hi, this is Hank, also making this very quick, so to speak. Sorry. We're talking about PCAP with TCP, old school, how you would do it. Wireshark was an icon there. There is an effort that wants to document PCAP here. Unfortunately, that effort was a little bit, the pipe that is fueling that effort, it was a little bit congested for this idea. So there's no update on this, but maybe that's something to synergize on, because I guess people who are used to that probably want to use the dissection tools at some point with your logs, and might be interesting to look at. And of course, yeah, JSON, CBOR, IETF, and that stuff, offline discussions for that will most certainly emerge. Thanks for that.
Yep, thank you.
Okay,
Rob,
let's go.
I know we're short of time. Would it be possible to do a quick show of hands to see who's interested in this work in Opsawg? I'd be quite handy to get sort of feedback in who thinks this is stuff that's of interest here and who wants to participate in evolving this.
We can do it. Q-log interest in Opsawg. Start session. There should be, you should see a raise hand session. So if you raise hand if you support this work in Opsawg, or do not raise hand if you do not support it.
And just while it's going on, the background here of why I'm asking this question is because obviously if this works in the quick working group, there's obviously a lot of other work going on there, and it may be that people who are interested in this in particular may find that they get swamped with other stuff. And so maybe we can have discussions with Martin and I as to whether splitting up another working group for this work makes more sense, or whether it'd be better in a different home. So that's the question that I'm asking. I think this is interesting. Thank you.
Well, having a do not raise for the negative is probably not the great idea. If we wanted to, we could do it as, if we really, we could say the opposite. But so far, in the interest of time, I'll just call it here. 12 hands have gone up in support of interests here. So there's clearly some of the 53 people on of the participants. There's clearly some interest in that, Rob.
All right, thank you.
Okay, let's go.
Hello, working group folks. I'm Chaitanya, and I'll be presenting updates to the draft on behalf of my fellow co-authors, Shivam, Aditya, and Dema. Next slide, please. Yeah, just a quick recap. We'll just go over a quick recap of what this draft is about. So every network will encounter issues like packet loss from time to time. Well, in a multi-layered network, it is a tedious manual workflow involved to localize and root cause traffic blackhauling issues. In order to avoid this tedious workflow, drop packets may be subject to deep packet inspection along forwarding path and sent to a host or a software queue along with the type of exception and some additional metadata to identify the actual drop cause. This can really help network operators immediately understand the root cause and can facilitate automation to fix the underlying issues without any manual intervention. So this proposal actually focuses on extensions to IPFix for exporting the drop packet exception information in IPFix format. This was introduced in IETF 109. Some of the information elements already exist today. This draft floats a couple of new information elements, which are the forwarding exception code and the next hop ID, and the corresponding types are defined. Next slide, please. So we have addressed a few comments received since IETF 109. There is a comment from Joe on next hop ID, specifically a request to add additional description and examples to populate this field. We have added section 4.2.2 for forwarding next hop ID with some additional description and an L3 VPN network example on how to populate this field in some use cases. Additionally, we have added section 4.2.1 with some additional justification on forwarding exception code. And then the next comment that we received was from Robin, which says there's a really useful use case and will be a lot of help in troubleshooting the forwarding errors in any network. So there are no changes corresponding to that. And there's a comment from Rudiger as well to explore CBOR CDDL. I've had a confirm with this, and Rudiger mentioned that this is not applicable to this draft. Next slide, please. So as part of the next steps, we are looking for more feedback and comments on the draft and possible working group adoption. Next slide. Thanks. I think that's all I have.
Jeff?
Hi, very brief question. After looking through the document, so I'm seeing some of the codes for why drops are happening. Has there been discussion about providing drop information about what layer it's happening at, like maybe a layer 2 forwarding exception, layer 3 forwarding exception, etc.?
So that is something that can be implicitly fetched from the drop code. We will consider. We will see if there is an existing information element for it.
Okay, I think there may be some mismatches in there since we share email domains. I'll send you a follow-up there.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah, Thomas Graf, Swisscom. I think the draft is very welcome from a network operator's perspective. It's valuable. What I would like to see is a bit more why you're introducing new fields. What is the main benefit? Because, for instance, the IPFix entity 89 is focusing on drop, forwarded, and consumed. And from what I understood is your main motivation is basically to introduce an enterprise bit and also increase the code point space for dropped, but you're not referring to any other use cases like forwarded or consumed. That's one, and I think there needs to be a bit more clarification on the next hop ID, what this really means. and also maybe why not existing fields can be used.
Yeah, so Shivam, do you want to take that? We cannot hear you, Shivam.
Yeah, can you hear me now? I unmuted myself,
Yes,
but
yes,
yeah.
Shivam.
There are two parts to the question, I think, right? So the first part, you are very right. The forwarding status actually talks about the consumed, dropped bits, etc. One of the reasons, I mean, we are also looking at it in a different way in the sense that if you look at it, for a given box, right, there is a relationship between, so IPFix is sent to a collector, right, eventually. And then there is a relationship between this collector and the node which is reporting this IPFix packet. And the nature of the node, depending upon its, for example, a Swisscom or a Cisco or a Juniper or a Arista, right? It's pretty much well known what a given drop code means and what is its behavior on the box. For example, on a given box, the TTL expiry might be a drop packet, but maybe on a different box, the TTL expiry might be the one which is actually a consumed exception in the sense that the packet is sent to the control plane, which will respond with an ICMP unreachable. So in that sense, what kind of we initially thought is that probably it is the drop code, which in itself will explain what kind of exception it is. But in addition to that, again, what we also considered is, remember, all of this encoding is consuming the forwarding path bandwidth. So what we want is only the organic data, which the only data path knows to be encoded, and no other extra information which can theoretically be derived. For example, if a given type of code can implicitly mean that it is dropped or consumed, then we don't want to have an extra bit and consume data path bandwidth in order to do that extra encoding. So that was one of the motivation why we didn't add it. But at the same time, I do understand what you're also indicating is if we have a marriage of the two, it kind of provides the backward compatibility where, I mean, some entity might not want to report both of them together. So definitely we'll give it a thought and we'll make sure that we add the compatibility aspect of it.
Excellent.
Does
Thank you
that
very much. Yeah,
so,
be done.
for the second part, I think the concern is mainly, see, forwarding status in the current form is very, very limited. And again, what we are trying to indirectly do via forwarding status is we are trying to standardize the drop codes, right? And the problem is we have so many variety of ASICs in the networking domain today, with each of them having their own proprietary pipelines, right? Some of them use a hard-coded ASIC pipeline, other are software driven, there are yet another which are microcode driven, and all of them have their own category and sets of exceptions. To give an example, on the Juniper side, one of our ASICs reports about 200 odd exceptions in the current format, and which is still increasing because of the fact that there is a bunch of state. I mean, our pipeline is very flexible. We can enhance to report more set of errors and exceptions. So in that sense, kind of generalizing it is a big challenge, and what is an exception for me might not be an exception for somebody else, right? So in that sense, what we thought was having a separate ID, right, gives us that flexibility, gives us that sample space to do it. And just to quote some examples, I mean, I think there was a question earlier about the layer 2, layer 3 exceptions. I mean, from a forwarding point of view, yes, we do have layer 2, layer 3 packet exceptions, the data plane state exceptions, and so on. But in most of the cases, the exception code in itself is implicitly defining whether it is a layer 2 or a layer 3 exception. Again, remember that this will not work in standalone. Basically, with these two exceptions, there are other information elements in IPFix like data link frame size and data link frame packet bytes, right, which can get reported. And actually, you can look at the actual packet to see what kind of packet actually kind of encountered that exception. So that was the kind of motivation why we separated out, and we think a larger sample space will in general help.
I think that makes completely sense. So then it's understood there are basically many reason codes, and I also welcome that you're introducing the enterprise bit. But one feedback maybe that you consider is to increase the scope, so not just look for the dropped, but also for the forwarded and consumed packets maybe.
Sure, definitely.
Thanks for the feedback. We're gonna have to move on for time reasons. So this great conversation, I would say this is again great fodder for the mailing list to keep these conversations going and to spur others to participate as well.
So let's go to the next. Benoit?
Right, so I want to present on service assurance for intent-based networking. We've got 20 minutes, but I want to take a small part of those 20 minutes, maybe 7-8 minutes, because the second part of it will be like presented by another Benoit number one in this case, at the Liège University, where he wants to show what he's been doing in terms of research. So what I want to do here, next slide please, is present those two slides. Present those two drafts very quickly. A kind of refresh. I presented multiple times. So I want to evaluate the group interest to have like working documents, and most of the time will be used by the Professor Benoit. All right, next slide. So trying to fly over the slides, because I've done it multiple times, what is the issue? The issue is that whenever you configure a service in a network and the service degrades, you wonder where the fault is and what the symptoms are, and in the end, the root cause. But once you've identified what a degrading component or a failing component, which service is impacted, and it is not easy. So this architecture decomposed the problem into what we call subservices, smaller components. And through an assurance graph, we're going to assure those subservices independently. And then we're going to infer a health score for the service composed from different subservices. Now, this approach complements the end-to-end monitoring. What is this like synthetic OWASP or hybrid with iFit or in-situ AM, right? Because this end-to-end monitoring gives you like the network is a black box in case of OWASP T1, and we want to understand what's happening in the network. All right, next slide. So the architecture is like this. We have a controller or an orchestrator that configures service, and from there we're going to have the same orchestrator that will decompose the graph into multiple components, and an agent that will go and request whatever we want from monitor entities. Whether this is Yang or CLI or SNMP or Prometheus, if this is what you care about these days. And then we send via telemetry the health status and the symptoms for closed-loop automation. In the next slide, I'm showing what we want to standardize. We want to standardize the interfaces. So interfaces are APIs, and Yang generate APIs. So we're proposing to have Yang models there for configuring the SYN agent and for reporting the health status. Next slide. What we're not going to standardize, this is all the boxes there. We're not there to standardize an orchestrator or a collector or an agent, but just the interfaces. Next slide. This is a mock-up. I'm not sure if you could increase the font to have full screen, but it's just a mock-up of what you could be doing. At the top, there is like a tunnel interface, and to get the health of that service, we decompose it into multiple subcomponents. On IP connectivity, let's V4 or V6, we decompose it into the health of an interface, a loopback interface, on which there's a tunnel interface and the health of a device. So I explained that already in the past. So this is basically the assurance graph, and every single subservice in there should be assured. And we infer the health of the service by reporting up to the top the service, the health of the components. So if you've got like a failing component in that assurance graph, it's going to report the info health of the device. There are many concepts in the draft about the type of dependencies you have and the health score and all this, but I will skip this for now and go to the next slide. So the thing I want to stress here is that we speak about an open and flexible architecture. In which sense? First of all, because it's multi-vendor. In the world of orchestration, we must be configuring devices from different vendors. That's a fact. There are not many networks in the world that are only a single vendor. And that architecture and those Yang modules foresee this case where we could just augment the module and have even proprietary components with this way, vendor specific. It's also open and flexible in the sense that it covers multi-domains. I believe into closed loop automation where we could do it inside a device, inside a controller, inside a domain, or even above that. Now, the idea is to link those different assurance graphs that are domain specific. And because we have like references in the Yang module, we could just link those graphs together. And if you've got services that are multi-domain, and in the end, they all are multi-domain, right? You take one application that is over net VPN that goes into a cloud that goes into a server. And these are different worlds, so we could connect those together. And next slide. And I believe I did a good job to rush over the slides, but it was mainly the way to refresh what we said in the past. So there are 3 questions. Is this the right problem to solve from an industry point of view? Second question, at the IETF, and third question, is this going in the right direction? So if we believe that the answer to those questions is yes, then you might be considering adopting those as written documents. And I will stop here. Now, Benoit will present the second part of the slide, and maybe we should just get all the question and answer at the end of this presentation.
Okay, so I guess you can hear me, guys. Thank you, Benoit. Just a quick introduction. So I'm Benoit Donnet from Université de Liège in Belgium. So good morning or good afternoon, everybody, depending on where you are on Earth. So the objective here is just to share with you our experience with this intent-based networking stuff. With what we call the diagnostic agents. So next slide, please. So as I said, our main objective behind that is just to evaluate the part of the architecture Benoit has just presented a few seconds ago and try to push it forward. And how do we want to push it forward? By providing open source tools, so building a community around the tool, a community from the industry, but also from the academic world. And we want to push further that stuff through use cases and demonstrate through use cases the validity and the interest for both world industry and academic of the sane architecture. So up to now, we have worked on basic use cases, but we are moving forward. So we discuss that in a few seconds. And our current use case is just to pretty much monitor VPP within a VM. So VPP, vector packet processing, which is a fast packet processor at the user level. So next slide, please. So to position ourselves in the architecture presented by Benoit a few seconds ago, if you remember well, there was this sane agent. So that's where we implement stuff, what we call the diagnostic agent. And the monitor entities up to now is just a VPP running inside the VM. And we have this implementation, and we can possibly discuss with some sane collector through remote procedure call to send back some information about what we have monitored. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, thank you. So it does move a little bit, but that's the architecture of the diagnostic agent. So the red rectangle is the diagnostic agent you have seen on the previous slide, which is based on pretty much 3 parts: input, metrics, and rules. So in terms of, let's say, input, through the input, we discover data sources and collect data such as bare metal, virtual machine information, VPP data, whatever the way. We also have IOM data possibilities for telemetry data, like buffer occupancy of routers in your systems, delays, and so on. Up to now, this input information is pretty much configured through some input file, which is a CSV file, which describes the input. Then from this input, we can have the metrics, which are actually normalized, the input which is normalized, the input data which is normalized. And we additionally discover subservices, their dependency. If required, we build the graph of dependencies and so on. And again, up to now, those metrics comes with through a file, a CSV file, as a kind of list of vendor-independent metrics. And then we got the rules, which are based on the metrics and the input. They are just there to check for symptoms based on, well, the normalized metrics and so on. Those rules now, we have a very basic language for them, which is the input file, which is CSV file, and we just parse it in Python, and those rules are just it's just Pythons with the metrics used as variables. So that's pretty much what we have. If we want to push forward, it's obvious that we will need to define a rigorous language for the rules, which might be comes with some grammar stuff, and implement some kind of compiler within the diagnostic agent to execute the rules and so on. Then we can expose to the operator what has been observed by the diagnostic agent through what we call the DXTop and the DXWeb. So next slide, please. So the DXTop is just a console application which will display the data that's been collected and that is being processed and decided based on the rules and so on. So you have multiple screens, you can switch between screens, you can scroll up, you can scroll down, obviously. Maybe you don't see that much on the slide, but you have a bunch of metrics there with their associated values, and you can have a look on what happens. That's just there here, that's the health screen, which provide information, but we have CPU, memory, processes, networking, VMs, VPP, obviously, and so on. So next slide, please. The DXWeb is a web interface which presents the dependency graph. That's pretty much the same graph as Benoit has presented a few minutes ago, which was a mockup. It is a one from the real world, I mean, our experiments. And we have a color code so that the operator can quickly have a look at the health of the system. If everything is green, well, that's perfect. If everything is red, that's there is a problem. That's pretty much up to you to determine and interpret that. Next slide, please. So that's just a quick overview, a more deep overview of the notion of rules, which are there to highlight symptoms. That's the way it is presented pretty much within the CSV file as input. So we have a comment associated to the rule, then we have the code associated to the problem like red, orange, and so on, and the rule per se on the right, which for the moment is a simple rule with simple operators like greater than, less or equal. We can possibly combine with some logical operators and so on. So that's up to now, that's quite basic. But as I said earlier, if we want to go further, we will need some more formal language, more formal grammar for the rules, so that we can express more stuff with the rules. Next slide, please. So that's the example of what we observed. That's the our use case. I told you before, that's the monitoring of the VPP in a virtual machine instance with two screenshots. The top screenshot, everything is going down smoothly, and you can barely not see, but there is the red circle on the bottom graph, bottom figure, on which we see a drop in the health situation of the machine. So something is happening there. So that's what we have, what we can see with our diagnostic agent. Next slide, please. So thank you. Here is the up to now, I presented you where we are. Now I'm going to discuss a few seconds on where we want to go with that work. So that's an ongoing work. I already quickly mentioned that we have IOM in there. So that's for telemetry, for traffic telemetry. So we want to push further that. So we are active on IOM. And we believe that putting together IRM and this diagnostic agent will allow to have some, let's say, advanced telemetry or advanced observatory tool for your network, for your services, for your apps, if you have that. So with IOM, you can get, that's just, for instance, buffer occupancy, queue depth, and so on, which are interesting features you want to monitor. We have pushed a little bit further IOM with the so-called cross-layer telemetry, which is a way to, let's say, mix IOM and open telemetry. So the idea is to have a view of the entire stack from L2, L3 up to L7, layer 7. So that's visible. That's for any distributed tracing tool. So basic ID is to have within IOM the trace ID and span ID of open telemetry within the packet of IOM, so that we have the full information. So that's interesting if you want to monitor the application. So that's nice. We have students working on a Python wrapper for the one-way measurement protocol, which we want to plug in with the diagnostic agent. We are currently thinking about more complex and let's say mature use cases for this observation and service assurance, which is an application running in a cloud, data center, edge, whatever you want, through multiple instances. And we have customers who express some specific service level SLO between ourselves and the app. And we have our diagnostic agent, possibly with IOM, with cross-layer telemetry, which will be in charge of discovering the most appropriate app instance within all the possibilities and the most appropriate path to the most appropriate app instance. And then we connect both the app instance and the selected path and the client through some protocols. We have not yet decided. That's something we want to explore, like segment routing, like possibly multipath TCP or multipath quick or something else. And obviously, we will control the loop there. We will make sure that the path that has been selected, the app instance that has been selected, is still the most appropriated one over time. And thus, we will possibly redirect the customer to the up to now most appropriate instance or path or whatever. So that's where we are. So next slide, please. So to conclude, we have a prototype which works pretty much well, but we still have lots of work to do. So again, I repeat, our objective is to build a community around that, around advanced telemetry from both the industry and the academic world. And we are all for the open source. So you've got the links to some GitHubs where we get the diagnostic agent implementation, the IOM implementation, the IOM agent implementation for the diagnostic agent. But I think you will have also a link there towards our IOM Linux kernel implementation and cross-layer telemetry implementation. And that's it for me. So if you have any question, I guess Benoit and myself, so Benoit and Benoit, will be happy to try to answer them.
We're at 10 till, and I want to make sure that Ops area gets some time for the open mic, but if there is any quick question, we can answer it. There was something in chat, but Benoit addressed it. Actually, I think I saw another thing pop up. So Med was asking about how the service assurance is designed. I guess this should be provided as an input to the SANE architecture.
Mm-hmm. Not really, in the sense that as long as Benoit mentioned, the agent will communicate with the SANE architecture through some Yang module or whatever, or API. So whatever the service you have, it seems okay to me. Or maybe I didn't get your point.
I think the question was more about how do you compose the graph, right? And in there, composing the graph is it basically depends on what you're trying to monitor, and there is no free lunch there. You know that you got the intent coming from the service, and it's going to decompose the graph, the assurance graph automatically. So there is a little bit of domain expertise to be inserted there.
Rob, you enter the queue.
Very quickly. So Benoit asked 3 questions at the beginning, and I can't remember exactly. I think the first one is this a valid thing to be working on? The second one is should we do this in IETF? The third one is this the right approach? I think just my view is I think yes, this is something that is this sort of assurance of devices is definitely something we should be working on. I would like to see this work at the IETF. I think it's a good thing to do. Whether this is the right approach, I think that it certainly seems to have merit, but obviously there needs to be further discussion there. I think of interest is not just the Yang models between the devices. I think the expression language for defining the relationships between the different services is also important. Just my thoughts.
I would agree with that, and this is why somehow the university is also working on this, right? What is the right formal language to do that, right? Now, we decided that maybe it's not something that we want to analyze day one, because if we report the health score of the subservice of the component, this is good already, and somehow you don't care how you get that, right? As long as you say, okay, my component, maybe a virtual firewall or whatever, works fine or doesn't work fine, and these are the list of symptoms, we're good. So we don't need like a single Uber meta language to do everything.
I see Chen real quick, and then we're going to hand things over to Rob and Warren.
I do see this work actually is very valuable, and I think it follow top-down approach actually to decompose the service level data into lower level data object, so it can. So one of the merit I see actually can greatly reduce the data object it connect from the underlying network. So I think it's very useful.
Thank you, Benoit and Benoit. And with that, we conclude. I think there was a few other questions that maybe come up in chat from Edward and Adam. If you could take those to the list, that would be great on the SANE work. And with that, we'll conclude Opsawg, Ops Area Working Group section. And Rob and Warren, all yours.
Just question is Tianran able to, yeah, brilliant, share the slides. Right, I'll let Warren start talking first then.
Excellent. So I'm assuming that the same scribes are willing to continue, scribing.
Oh, regrettably, Warren, I must disappear in 5 minutes, so I'll need somebody to back me up.
I'm backing you
Okay.
up, Elliot.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, thanks, Elliot. Thanks, Joe. So welcome to Ops Area. This is the shorter part of Ops AWG. Next slide. That's Rob on the left. This is me on the right. I realize that we've been meeting virtually for a long time, and so some set of people might not know who we look like, but this is us. So next slide. IoT Ops had its first working group meeting this time. This is a working group that we've been wanting to get chartered for a really, really, really long time, 7 or 8 years. Basically a place where we can discuss IoT operations type stuff in the IETF. What's interesting is that it's a new style of working group. It's mainly a discussion group where people can get together and discuss gaps and issues that they're seeing with the operations of IoT stuff. What bits we're missing in our protocols. If you take all of the protocols that are developed in the IETF and squish them together, do you end up with a real architecture, or are there some important bits that are missing? It met yesterday. It was a fascinating session. There were about, I wrote it down, around 80 people there. And the agenda was incredibly full. And what we realized is that there were enough people and enough agenda stuff that we're planning on having an interim relatively soon. More on that in upcoming. And next slide, which I think might be the last one. So questions and abuse. I think that Rob has a question or statement.
Well, it's just a comment really. So I wanted to say that it'd be useful if anyone's interested in doing sort of working group chairing type role, either if they've done it before or if they're potentially newer to IETF and are interested in that sort of thing. It'd be quite handy if you could drop Warren and I an email. And it's not saying there's necessarily any open doors right at the moment, but it's useful for us to have people who are interested in that sort of thing, so we can try and plan that out, and maybe we can try and find some opportunities to get some experience. So if you are interested, then please do let us know. That'd be really helpful. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, just a clarification from that. That's not specifically for Ops AWG, right? We're not trying to scare the current chairs away. This is in general, within the Ops area, if there is. If you're willing to consider being a chair, etc.
Thank you. Any other questions or general comments? Oh, the other thing I should also say is we've got an Ops Hours session, Warren and I, for half an hour just after this meeting. So if there's anything you want to discuss and relate back to Warren and I in a slightly more private setting, then that is available. And the WebEx link for that is in the IETF 110 agenda. I don't see any questions here, so I think we might actually pretty much manage to finish on time.
Yes, as Rob said, we will be in the WebEx room in a bit if you want to come along and provide feedback in a more private session. Great. Well, I guess that concludes the Ops area part of Opsawg. See you all in a few months or online.
Okay, see you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Have a nice remaining IETF.